Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 388 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Bussels coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio. I'll be coming to you from California this weekend if I manage to be able to do an episode at that point in time. But right now I'm in Sandusky. But we're going to talk about round eight and a few of the events that have come about through round seven. And I don't know if I would call it maybe an evil epiphany or just a, hey, why not an idea. Um, Last evening, I sat down with my friend Donnie Hess from Donnie's Disposals. Donnie's been a longtime coach with the Des Moines Roosters in the USAFL, and we reviewed round seven and went through the tips for round eight. So I've locked myself into the tips on his show. So I'll be sticking with the same ones for this week. On my show as well. I'm not going to change any of mine up because I happen to be on a different podcast, but he's over on YouTube. I'll put a link to the show. Donnie does a really, really nice job with his show and has some fantastic guests. And he's got a great one lined up coming pretty soon, and I cannot wait to hear it. But we're going to go ahead and jump into round eight here in a little bit. We're going to look back at, like I said, some things that happened during round seven. Um, don't forget that if you have an idea for a great guest for the podcast, please feel free to reach out. I love being able to talk to people about the game and at all levels from, local footy, which I think is just a really, really neat situation with the game at that level, all the way up through the highest levels. So if you know somebody that you think would be a great guest, maybe it's you, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com or head over to my website, ayankonthefooty.com. Leave me a note there. And there are links to all my socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that sort of thing over there, at Yank underscore on X or Twitter. I spent a lot of time there and would love to hear from you. So, we're going to get into the good news, if you will, first off here, and I'm thrilled to see this. Bobby Hill has signed. Well, I guess as a cat supporter, I'm not too terribly thrilled to see it this week because his mind is going to be a little bit more at ease, um, which does not bode well for my cats this week as they're playing Collingwood. But he has signed on with the Pies through the year 2030, joining a number. Um, of his teammates. One of the Dacos brothers, Dan Houston, I believe. Harry Perryman, I think, is also signed on through 2030 as well, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so this club, who I did not put into the finals this year, who was playing lights out football, who kind of joked about and alluded to being one of the oldest clubs in the comp, are locking in some of their younger talent for the long term, and I applaud them for that, and I congratulate Bobby Hill. He's a phenomenal young player, just a lot of fun to watch him play the game, and I if I had to be offered, and this is not to take away from this other player right now. Bobby Hill seems to play the game at both ends of the ground, whether he has the ball in his hand or whether he does not. Um, if somebody said you can have either Bobby Hill or Charlie Cameron, I think I would probably take Bobby Hill 9.5 times out of 10. I just think he's a more complete player. Yeah, Charlie Cameron's a great goal scorer, but he could maybe do a little bit more defensively to help out his side. But you can't argue with results there either. So Bobby Hill, great on your part. Um, I did rant a little bit about this last night. Hypothesizing what was going to happen. And when I got up this morning, I did see that the tribunal has decided to bring the hammer down on Paul Curtis. And I got to tell you, I wonder where this game is going to be here. Um, I heard somebody mention that maybe they just have players sign waivers, assuming responsibility, assuming, acknowledgement that you could possibly find yourself becoming concussed and possibly long-term injury, that sort of thing coming out of this, because it was just a good football play. And I mentioned, I think it's a pretty funny line, and I'll let you hear it over on Donnie's episode if you'd like to hear it there. But I was a bit of a conspiracy theorist here, in terms of maybe somebody who's on the tribunal after Paul Curtis is now going to be lost for the next 3 weeks, and Jackson Archer was lost earlier in the year for, to me, another bogus decision. Okay. Um, I just, I don't think, and I've heard this repeated, that you cannot adjudicate outcome. You're really in this kind of situation. Okay. Um, I think that Archer got screwed, and I think Paul Curtis has been screwed here as well. Um, he made a great tackle. He made a great tackle. Josh Sin decided to drop to his knees. And could he have pulled an arm free? Absolutely, he could have. But he was so concerned about holding on to the ball, which he didn't hold on to the ball anyway. I just, this game that I have fallen in love with. I mean, and again, I've only been following it for about a decade now. And I'm getting to the point now where I don't even recognize it anymore. So I cannot imagine what those of you who've been following this game for 25, 30, 40 years are thinking about this. And again, I get the idea of the long-term issues with the head injuries and CTE and those kinds of things. But if you're going to adjudicate the game this way, maybe we should just shut the whole thing down now and save everybody the headache, no pun intended, of having to watch this game that we all love just continue to get debased and watered down and turned into like touch football. Okay. It's do we give them like, Nerf swords, and if you hit the guy with the Nerf sword, well, that's a tackle. It's a free kick for you going the other way. Set your Nerf sword down, take your kick, and continue playing. And again, that's a kind of a silly way to describe it, but I'm just really disgusted by what I'm seeing happen with the tribunal. Okay. I don't know how, and I'm not trying to be a North Melbourne apologist here, but it just happens that the two major suspensions this year at the AFL level have come at the expense of that club. And if you really extrapolate what I'm talking about here, um, and you think about the 2025 draft, you might be able to kind of get what I'm hinting at in terms of, and again, I have no evidence of that. I'm purely saying this for jest purposes because I'm trying to laugh at a really shitty situation, quite frankly. Okay, I'm so sad to see this young man having to deal with this because he made a good football play. He made a good football play. He even came off to his side. He did come off of Sin's side. He rolled off of him on the side. And I really appreciate what Jimmy Bartell said about it. It's just, how do we go about adjudicating the outcome? It was not his intent by any stretch of the imagination. Are we, are we going to just, now say, no more speckies? You could possibly bump the player's head. Okay. I'm beyond frustrated. And Paul Curtis, I'm sorry that you're having to deal with this. Um, if you wanted to say, hey, here's a week, be more careful, then go for it. And as Jimmy Bartell said, if you want to just go ahead and say, okay, if a player gets concussed, it's 3 weeks automatically. Put it in the bylaws. Just say, don't worry about the goddamn tribunal anymore. Just say, boom, guy's got a concussion. It's 3 weeks. Just put it out there. Put it in writing instead of having to go through the bullshit of the tribunal week in and week out where people have to waste their time and their resources. If I'm not mistaken, clubs lose soft cap money, if I'm not mistaken, if they're adjudicated and they don't win. I'm not saying I'm done with the game. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm sorry. To me, these decisions are in many ways just debasing the game. They're taking the natural, and I don't even want to say aggressiveness, just the natural ball playing out of this. I'm not saying that they were being aggressive. He wasn't being aggressive. He made a tackle. He wrapped a guy up. The guy dropped to his knees. He decided to fall forward. Is there no responsibility on the part of Josh Sin to put himself in a position where he doesn't get concussed? Could he not roll to his own side to prevent that happening? And I'm asking, I'm sounding angry about it, but I'm asking you because I honestly I don't know. Again, I've never played the game. Let's be honest. There's no player in the AFL whose arms are long enough to wrap me up for a tackle anyway, and not likely they could just kind of push me. I'm old. I'd fall down, probably break a hip. But is there any responsibility on his part? Is there any sin on the part of Josh Sin here? Should he be held accountable? And I'll be honest, I cannot remember the name of the young player that Jackson Archer ran into. Um, and I'm going to actually go back and see if I can find that here real quickly. We're going to go back here to North. I think that was actually week one, if I'm not mistaken, in the season. Was it the Bulldogs? Um, let's see. We're going to go to the Bulldogs game. I think it was James O'Donnell, if I'm not mistaken, that was concussed. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's who it was. Um, it might have been week two. So don't hold me to that. But like I said, I think it was against the Bulldogs. Um, so I just really wonder where we're going to be going as a game here, and talk me off of this ledge here, okay? Am I completely crazy? Am I completely wrong on this, or are you thinking the same thing that I'm thinking that your game is being destroyed, and it's your game? I'm just along for the ride, okay? It's your game. Uh, is there a does the fan base have the ability to have a say so about what is going on to try to um, ensure that maybe some continuity in the game? Can the fans rise up in I don't want to say protest, but can they express their displeasure to AFL House? I don't know. I don't know, but I just think that Paul Curtis got screwed here. I think Jackson Archer got screwed because the other guy made the decision to dive at his knees. That's what happened. And Jackson Archer was decelerating. If you're not sure, take the little GPS thing out of his back. I'm sure you could probably figure out what his speed was and what it ended up being when contact was made, that he was decelerating. So, tribunal, you need to, an AFL, you need to get this thing tightened up here because I think that what you're doing here is destroying an absolutely beautiful game here. So enough about that. I did want to move on to quickly discuss what's going on with Jamar Ugle-Hagan. He is now officially taken a leave of absence. He's taken an unofficial one. So here's my question: if he's out partying, he can't. Supposedly he's still working out, but he's not training with the club necessarily as frequently as they'd like. I did see a report from John Ralph and um, on I believe it was on the Code Sports app. Yeah, it is on Code Sports, where he has I'm sorry, this is Jay Clark that wrote this, where he's taking the leave of absence. Now, does the Western Bulldogs club get to stop paying his salary? I mean, you could provide, mental health support, you could provide all of that sort of thing, but do they get to hold on to some of their salary cap and get some relief for this if he's not going to participate on the team? Now, again, if it's an injury and you're not able to play, and I know we're kind of, splitting hairs here, and Gary Lyon brought up a good point on 360. Not everybody has the mental, make up the fortitude, if you will, to stand up to the rigors of being a professional athlete. You're in the fishbowl, if you will, and maybe this has just become too much for him. Is it going to improve for him? Possibly. I mean, there's no guarantee that it's going to improve, but it might. Um, but I really wonder where this is going to go. I really do. And I think the Bulldogs, they're doing everything they possibly can to keep themselves afloat, including, beating a good Giants, club in Canberra. Um, but they're just this kid is talented. And again, I can't say I know what's going on with him. I don't know. I'm not. Um, I wish him well. Okay, I really do. But there's got to be some sort of salary cap relief from the club. Maybe he would be better served playing local footy. Maybe he could go have a fine career doing that as a hobby and go find, a regular 9 to 5 job, if you will, that sort of thing. Maybe make a few bucks playing local footy. Maybe the pressure has become too great for him. And if that's the case, then I guess, we're kind of watching, we're watching the start of where, sometime down the road, months or a year or so down the road, whatever it is, where he's going to decide to step away from footy. It's not for everybody. And if he decides to step away, I absolutely wish him well. But we kind of have there's a saying, and it's kind of it's not necessarily the most kind saying, but the whole shit or get off the pot, if you will, um, type thing here. So I feel bad for him because I think that he's getting pressure from a number of other areas, and I don't know if he knows how to actually deal with what's going on here. So I wish him all the best, and I feel bad for the Bulldogs as well. Now, while I was talking to Donnie, and it'll come up during his episode as well, but I did not want to leave this one out of my episode, and I kind of had this little idea that popped into my head. We got talking about the West Coast Eagles a little bit, and just the continued futility and how they had hanged on. Yeah, somebody's been hanged. Um, they hung on to a few of their veteran players for maybe a longer period of time than they should have, and they've got this great second year player playing for them, and the talks are already happening. After 2026, where's Harley going to be playing? Is he going to Hawthorne? Is he going to Geelong? Is he going to Essendon? Well, you know what? I had this idea, and I'd love to hear from supporters of both clubs to see what you think on this. And maybe it's a terrible idea, but maybe it's just ingenious enough to work. Okay, so the Eagles have the services of this young man for the rest of this year and through 2026. And then he could leave if he chooses to do so, which he may decide to stay. Maybe we don't know what's in Harley Reid's mind in terms of his long-term goals with footy. Maybe he's realizing, what, being out of the fishbowl, if you will, of Melbourne isn't such a bad thing. Maybe seeing what's happening with a player like Jamar Ugle-Hagan is giving him pause to want to come back. But let's say that it isn't, okay? And let's say that they decide, what, we don't want to wait until 2026 because now these younger players that we have brought in, because Oscar Allen seems to be on the way out as well, and who knows who else? I mean, this just it's a train wreck, and I know people have alluded to the idea that maybe the West Coast Eagles should be putting in for a priority pick because of their continued futility. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the one of the top two wealthiest clubs in the competition in terms of like cash on hand. I think they and the Magpies are right up towards the top, if I'm not mistaken. But here's my thought. Okay, here's my thought here, and let me know if you think I'm completely crazy. If you do, you'd be just like my family that likes to tell me that on a semi-regular basis. You're nuts. Okay, so here's my thought here. All right. Um, we've got one club right now that currently has, as they sit, they have two of the top three picks in the 2025 draft. Okay. That's the Richmond Tigers. Okay. They have their own first round pick, and they have the first round pick of the North Melbourne Kangaroos. Okay. And I here's my thinking on this. What if, rather than waiting an extra year and burning a year of contract time with players who they're trying to build on their list, who may then decide we want out, um, what if West Coast calls up Richmond during the trade period here coming up at the end of the season said, "Hey, you know what? We've got this kid that it's been hinted at that he's planning on asking to go back to Melbourne in 2026. Would you like him a year early?" So, and again, I don't know the specifics of what the deal would be, but if the Eagles called and said, "Hey, we'd like picks 2 and 3," and maybe they end up being 3 and 5. Richmond's been playing tough. North Melbourne is going to figure out how to stop somebody defensively, and win a couple more games this year. I think maybe they end up being picks 3 and 6. I don't know. What if they say, we would like picks 3 and 6, and Harley Reid is yours a year early, and you can work on negotiating his contract. Maybe we'll even give you a window to talk to him to try to negotiate a new contract before we finalize the trade. Is that something that you would do if you were a Richmond supporter? Or would West Coast have to ask for more? I don't know. Would West Coast come along and see, because those are the only 2 picks that Richmond has in the 2025 draft. Okay, they emptied their closet quite a bit, bringing in some of the younger players that they brought in this year, the haul that they brought in this year. So would it take more? Would Richmond perhaps have to give up next year's first as well? And in that process, maybe would be able to recover a couple of the other picks that the West Coast Eagles have right now, because they have right now pick 1, and then as the ladder stands, and I'm getting these off of Zero Hanger right now, they've got 1, 15, 19, 33, and 51. Okay, the Eagles have by quite a margin, in terms of total points, in terms of draft capital, they have the most. Okay, Essendon is second, and the Tigers with picks 2 and 3 are actually third in terms of the point value. Okay. Um, could the West Coast Eagles ask for the 2 picks this year in the first round, 1 next year, and then maybe return, I don't know, picks 19 and 51, or 33 and 51, or 15 and 51 back to Richmond? So Richmond would still be able to bring in a couple of players in the draft this year to maybe replace some of the older players that are going to likely be stepping away this year from the club. And again, I don't know if this is even a good idea. I have no idea if he's even interested in going to Richmond, but Richmond has the capital to do that sort of thing. And quite frankly, they could do the exact same thing with Essendon, because Essendon's got picks right now 4, 7, 24, and 25. Okay. They've got their own pick. I'm sorry, they got Melbourne's pick, which is currently number 4. They've got their own pick, which is number 7. So they could even ring up Essendon and say, would you like him? Would you like him to be the face of one of the faces of your club going forward? Give you another hard around the ball midfielder that are going to put butts in the seat and help to make your club, a better side. Is Essendon at the point where they're ready to make that kind of a jump? I mean, I'll be honest, I think adding Harley Reid in 2026 to what Richmond brought in this last year, that is a really appealing idea right there. Again, I think that if you bring in Harley Reid and you plug him in next to a Sam Lawler, think about that. You plug those 2 guys in there, you got a 20-year-old and 18-year-old for the next decade. Richmond, I've told you all along, your glass is definitely half full, and it's dripping into it right now. It's filling up pretty quickly. Okay, you've got to be pretty thrilled about where you are, and West Coast. I think that you're at the point right now where you may have to take another step back before you can take a leap forward. I mean, there still is enough veteran presence on your club that is going to have to kind of depart before you can really start your rebuild with earnest. Okay. When we look at, you look right now at the age profile there, again, you've only got 6 players that are over the age of 30, but a lot of them are ones that are getting a lot of game time. And do you want to get games into the youngsters at this point in time? And what could you get for Oscar Allen? Could you bring in another first round pick? I mean, could the West Coast Eagles, and again, I know this gets back to the heart of kind of what we talked about with Jamaro Ugle-Hagan. It gets back to in some cases, the homesickness, if you will. So West Coast and Fremantle are in some ways, they're kind of locked into having to to draw from the draft, almost having to draw from the draft pool of WA, because there seems to be that push to want to get back home. But not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to. Some folks have gone on and had fantastic careers in out in WA. So I just really wanted to know what your thoughts were on that, because I thought it was rather intriguing and kind of popped in my head. I did not mention the Essendon aspect last night, but you could certainly do that. Um, I don't think, Gold Coast has got a lot of capital. They've got 9, 16, and 18 this year. I don't think that would be enough to get Harley Reid. Um, but you know, Harley Reid might think, you know what, going into the Gold Coast midfield right now, if they stay together, that might be the place to be. That or Richmond. I mean, yeah, think about it. Who's gonna be the club of the next 5 years? Is who's gonna win a prelim first? Gold Coast? Let's put them in order: Gold Coast, Richmond, or West Coast. I think we can put Gold Coast in there winning a prelim first. I think Richmond certainly would be second, and I think West Coast. I'm not even sure if they make finals in the next 5 years. The way things are going right now, I think North Melbourne figures out a way to win a finals game first before West Coast does. Let's be honest. I think even Essendon might find a way to win a finals game before West Coast does at this point in time. So I think they're going to really have to just judge and figure out, young man, what is it that you want to do? Now, he doesn't have to give them an answer right now. He's perfectly capable of just saying, not at this time. I'm going to wait until 2026. And that's certainly his right to do that. Okay. And me personally, I think that the first year contract should even be a year longer. I think they should be committed to the club for an extra year. So I think it's 3 years right now for first round picks. I think it should be 4 years, because you're investing that high pick, and it just becomes that vicious cycle where if they leave, you've got to go back and reinvest that time again as the rest of your list gets older. So they have a hard time finding that sweet spot, if you will, where everything's just gonna work out properly. So that's kind of what my thoughts were on that. If I would consider possibly looking at moving on, Harley Reid, if he was interested in doing that this year, because there are a couple of opportunities for you to maximize your return on investment. Okay. Yeah, Essendon might even be a better choice because they still have a couple picks in the 20s. Maybe you could get maybe you could get all of their picks and then send back 33 and 51. Maybe you could get 4, 7, 24, and 25. And maybe at that point in time, there's a couple of WA athletes who are worthy of being taken at 1, 4, and 7, and then even at 24 and 25. And if you hit on all of them, you've basically filled almost 20% of your best 22 in one draft. Look at what Richmond did this year. Richmond, I think, did close to a quarter of their, even maybe a little more, of their best 22, or what's going to be their best 22 in about a year. Okay, so enough about Harley Reid, enough about that deal. I really thought it was, something to consider. Okay, so let's get into my tips for this week. We've got Essendon and North Melbourne playing at Marvel on Thursday night. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people thinking, boy, the Thursday and Friday night games, they're not great. But I think this one could be pretty entertaining. And I did offer a caveat on this one, and I'm sticking to it. I had said I went with North Melbourne to win because and I did hedge my bets there. I said if Paul Curtis does not play, that I might go with Essendon. And I thought, I'm still going to go with North Melbourne. So I'm going to go with the Kangaroos to beat Essendon outright at this point in time. And then we've got the Dockers traveling to Marvel Stadium to face off against St. Kilda. And St. Kilda, both of these clubs they're enigmas. Okay. Now, I'm going with the Dockers to win this one only because I think they're a better side right now. And I tipped them to play in the grand final this year, so I better start seeing them win some games to help that tip come out accurate there. So I'm going with Fremantle to win this one, and then we head out to Mars Stadium with the Bulldogs and Port Adelaide, and it's a Bulldog home game, if you will. It's Ballarat, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I'm going with the Bulldogs to win this one. I think that they're going to be actually in pretty decent shape because they now realize we don't have the specter of, hey, what if, with Jamar Hagan hanging over their head. He's out of the picture right now. Okay, he's out of the picture. Is he going to be back in it? I have no idea. I just have this funny feeling he's not. I have a funny feeling he's not going to play for this club again. Okay, I really just have a feeling we're not going to see him again. But I think the Bulldogs are going to, continue playing this inspired football. Um, you used to a saying here where this, you dance with who brung you. So when you go to the dance, you dance with who brought you to the dance. And it was an old like slang thing. Dance with who brung you. And that's what the Bulldogs do. They're dancing with the players that they have available. Okay, and maybe if he comes back this year, they'll dance with somebody else then. And then Carlton heads to Adelaide to face off against the Crows. This is a pretty intriguing game in and of itself. I did go with Adelaide to win this one mainly because they're at home. I think this is the Carlton's defense is a little sketchy right now. Zach Williams is likely to be out this week. I just think Adelaide. And again, I don't know if Riley Thilthorpe's going to play with his hand injury. He did come back into the game last week, so against I think it's Fremantle. So I have a feeling he'll probably play. I hope he plays because he's on my fantasy team. 17th round, by the way. Um, but I think Adelaide at home is a pretty good choice in this one. Very competitive game, though, I think. Okay, and then we've got the Magpies and the Cats at the MCG. Um, I learned my lesson a while back, and maybe I learned it again this past week. Don't tip against your own club. Well, I'm not going to tip against my own club. In Chris Scott, we trust, and I think Chris Scott's going to find a way um, to go ahead and contain the Magpies. And I'm gonna go. And again, I'm really concerned about, as far as the Cats go. I'm concerned about Tom Stewart's knee. I think it might be worse than we realize. And I don't know if Brian Myers is going to be back because day 12 of his concussion protocol, and I want him to be healthy, is the day of this game. So I don't know in terms of the way the numbers work out whether he would even be allowed to play in that game. But I'm going to go with the Cats because I just think that Chris Scott finds a way to get it done because that's what he does. He finds a way to win games when we go, oh, they don't have a shot at winning this one. And he figures out how to do it. Okay. And then we've got the Giants. Let's go back to the Eagles and the D's first off. Okay. Out at Optus, Melbourne played a pretty decent game against an upstart Richmond side. I'm going with Richmond to win this one. Excuse me. I'm going with Melbourne to win this one. Sorry about that, Richmond. I'm going with Melbourne to beat the Eagles. I just think the Eagles are in disarray. You've got some players who are playing hard because they realize they're playing for their career. Um, and some are auditioning for other clubs because they may not find themselves there. Even some of the older players might find themselves delisted, hoping to latch on to another club next year if they've still got a little bit left in the tank. So I just think that Melbourne right now is playing a little bit better, which they couldn't play much worse. Okay, they've been really bad to start the year, but they certainly played a much better game in what was a really difficult game to watch, quite frankly, against the Tigers this past week. So I'm going with the D's on the cross country trip to go ahead and win this one. And then we head to the SCG for the Giants visiting the Swans. And will the real GWS Giants please stand up because this does not look like the club that we're accustomed to seeing. They just don't. Okay, I'm going with the Swans to win this one. I just I don't know why. I mean, on paper right now, GWS is a far better team. But I just have this funny feeling at home, the Swans in the Sydney Derby, and I think they just find a way to get it done. So I'm going to go with Sydney to beat GWS in this game um, by about 8 points. And I know I didn't give you the point differences on any of the other ones, but I think Sydney finds a way to sneak home a win here. And as they start to get healthier, um, maybe they can string some things together. All right. And we head back to the MCG for Richmond and Hawthorn. I think this is gonna be a very good game. Hawthorne's got a few injuries right now, and Richmond is yeah, they lost to the D's this past week, but they're playing pretty good football. Okay. I am going to go with Hawthorne to win this, and I just think Hawthorne is a better side right now. Um, James Sisley's been in a bit of a funk here lately. I appreciated that funk when he played the Cats. He did not have a great game, so thanks, James Sisley. But I think Hawthorne has got enough talent right now to go ahead and beat the uh, the Richmond Tigers at this point in time, and then arguably the co-game of the round, and I think there may be three that fit this category here. Okay, I think that that the Cats and Pies for sure. I think Adelaide and Carlton is going to be a barn burner of a game. You've got the Brisbane Lions hosting the Gold Coast Suns at the Gabba, and I have a feeling this one's going to be sold out. And I hope as many Gold Coast supporters as possible can get to this game. And I know they're not too terribly far apart, but this is going to be a phenomenal matchup. I will be home late the night before that, so this is going to be a 5:20 a.m. start for me. I should be home from the airport on Saturday night at around 11 o'clock, so I should be able to get myself about 5 or 6 hours of sleep and be able to watch this one on Sunday morning as I gear back up to go back to school. We've got about 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the school year left. I'm really looking forward to the school year being done. I've I'm I'm not burned out necessarily, but I'm ready to move on to other things and have other things to think about for a while and just take a step back. And then and I keep getting tempted. Oh, I didn't tell you who's going to win this one. Okay, I'm going with Gold Coast to win at the Gabba. Okay, I am. I think that they're going to find a way to shut down Lockie Neal. And Lockie Neal and Matt Rowell might both get shut down. Because Lockie Neal ran wild last week, but I think that right now Gold Coast midfield might be a little bit better than Brisbane's, and not by much because Brisbane's got one hell of a midfield, and Eric Hipwood's been playing much better. But I just think that the upstart Suns are at a point right now where if they win this one, this is their we've arrived moment. Okay. This is a huge pelt to hang on their wall if they get this win. Um, and I just think Gold Coast is going to find a way to get this one done. Um, for a while, if you've ever followed American television back in the 1970s when the TV show Saturday Night Live began, Saturday Night Live was a live sketch comedy show on Saturday nights, hence the name Saturday Night Live. It's been on for a little over 50 years now. But when it first started out, and it had people like Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, who I loved, Gilda Radner. You've seen a lot of these people in movies over the years. Um, they called themselves the not ready for primetime players. And we could certainly make an argument that Gold Coast has been like that for quite some time. Well, I think they're ready for primetime. Okay. I think they're ready for primetime. And I hope that maybe next year, maybe next year, this could be the Friday night game on Fox Footy and Channel 7. Maybe when these two clubs, I think they pretty much play each other twice a year anyway. Maybe this could be the game that is on Friday night so the whole country can see this Gold Coast Sun squad and see these Brisbane Lions. I think that'd be awesome. Now, I went 5-4 in my tips last week, a little better than the week before, where I went only 3-6, but still not great. But I'll take it. It's above 500. It's above level. So, folks, there's my tips. Again, purely for entertainment purposes only. Do not place a wager based upon anything that I say. I'm here having a little bit of fun, hoping you're having some fun with it as well. Hopefully you're putting up with my rants because I did rant a little bit tonight. Paul Curtis, I'm thinking about you. And Tribunal, look in a goddamn mirror. Seriously, what are you doing to the game? What are you doing to the game? Okay. So, folks, remember, you can find anything about the podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. I do hope you'll sign up for the mailing list over there. It's easy to do. It'll pop up right on your screen. Put your email address in there, and I'll add you to the list. So when new episodes come out, I will get them in your email very shortly after they have been released. Also, if you would want to help out, sharing the podcast with your friends and family would be a huge help. Leaving a review would be a fantastic help as well. If you enjoy the show, I hope you'll take a moment. You can do that right on my website as well, and tell me what you think about the show. And I do still have the survey open up. I've not closed that out yet. I've had about a dozen responses on that. Um, and I'm going to close that out here fairly soon. And I'm going to kind of report back to all of you the survey results so you can see what other people have had to say. And I won't release the names of who said what, because that's not, or that's not important. Just, the overall information to me is kind of important. So I'll put a link to that survey in the show notes as well. So if you'd like to take about 5 minutes to fill that out, that would be a huge help. Again, give me a follow. Head over to YouTube, sign up for the subscription over there. I mean, well, just subscribe to it. There's not a fee. This is just a hey, subscribe. I've got 260 subscribers over there. I'm hoping to get to 300 here, maybe before the end of June. High hopes on my part there. Look out for one another, ladies and gents. Check up on your friends. If you need to reach out and talk to somebody, don't hesitate to do that. Okay? Get out and have that coffee. Go out and have that ice cream cone with somebody. Have a chat with them. Go get a snag at Bunnings, whatever you need to do. But if you need to talk to somebody, don't hesitate to reach out because the world's a much better place with you in it. Tomorrow, Hugo Hagan, I do hope you find solace and peace, whether it be in footy at the highest level or at a local level. But I do hope that the Western Bulldogs are able to recoup, not necessarily salary, but that they are able to go ahead and figure out what direction everything's going to go in, so they can move past this as well. So, folks, as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. And this has been episode 388 of the podcast. Don't forget to give me a follow again on my socials and share it with your friends and family. And until next time, folks, cheers and goodbye.